And we're back for the final episode of this series of discussions on transportation to Australia, Sydney Barracks, Hyde Park Barracks as they're known officially. We left off with this poster that begs the question, who do you think you are? And as I mentioned in the previous episode, this is an item introduced by the curators to get the visitors to reflect on their own Australian culture. And this is a reminder that although we've had some fun along the way with pretending to be convicts with the cat o' nine tails and nobody gets hurt and safe contact, the Sydney Barracks, like many of these historical sites in Sydney and elsewhere, have a particular objective to get us to think critically about who we are. And I was a visiting professor at the University of Sydney a few years ago in the Faculty of Law and Criminology and so on and so forth. And I'm really grateful for all my friends, my mates, my colleagues. Great experience, allowed me to really provide some thick exploration into penology and Australian culture. And I remember one evening we're in the pub with all my mates, and the subject of the stain of penal convicts in one's family. And it kind of went around the table. There were some who had some knowledge of their family, and they could document that with some historical records. Others were speculating. And one of my friends waited till everyone had their say, and he pulled out his mobile phone, and he switched it on, and he had an image of a historical document that had his great-great-great-grandfather's name and the date, 1788. He was on the First Fleet. And the table kind of got quiet because everybody knew that he had the biggest badge of honor. In this frame, let's magnify a wee bit, and you have a family reunion. And this is the small family. And I'm saying to myself, that's not a small family, that looks quite large to me. Well, First Fleet convicts John and Mary Small, married in Sydney in October 1788. That's the year of the First Fleet. And they farmed at Kissing Point. Oh, so it's already a love story. This is great. Their descendants have held an annual family gathering since 1971. They now span 10 generations and number into the tens of thousands scattered around Australia and overseas. Ask someone in your family if you have a convict ancestor. Who do you think you are? Well, storytelling institution relies on techniques of performance to get visitors to participate in this larger forum for exploration, reflection. And they had this search engine set up. And the visitors are invited to enter their surname and see what happens. So I followed the script in this performance, and I typed in my surname, and I got as far as W-E-L, if you follow the cursor, W-E-L. And already the search engine had discovered, and this is the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 convicts. Once again, that's the ship name. So George Welch was on the ship of Mangley's. Remember, that was the ship with John Lennon from a previous episode. And this is the voyage. It was the 8th voyage. Here's the 2nd voyage. Okay? And we have the date arrived, 1837, 1836, 1825, 1827. So you have to reflect on perhaps my ancestors and whether they were shipped from Ireland to Australia more than 150 years ago, thereabouts. So this other exhibit, as we get close to concluding this final episode, this is an exhibit that gives us an idea as to the number of items that the convicts had in their possession when they boarded the ship in England and Ireland. And you see a jacket, some trousers, a canvas bag, and so on and so forth. Here's some shoes. And you see this curious item here. Maybe people in the audience have a grandmother who used to say things like, "Those people over there are so poor they don't have a pot to piss in." Well, this is the pot to piss in, right there. That's what they had among the other items that they carried onto the ship. So I started looking at the surnames that are listed on this particular exhibit. And here I identify my mother's family surname, the Welch family, the Welch clan. So obviously there were people from Ireland with the surname of Welch who were transported to Australia. The Irish diaspora is further reflected in this memorial in the courtyard of the Sydney Barracks. And this is a plexiglass window that is inscribed by the names of Irish families. And it is devoted to the Great Irish Famine, the hunger. Hyde Park Barracks, built in 1817, 1819 to house male convicts, was adapted in 1848 as an immigration depot for unaccompanied female migrants. Many of these women and girls were refugees from the Great Irish Famine, 1845. This monument is a memorial to the famine and a celebration to the Irish contribution to Australia. So if you've watched my other videos and lectures, I talk about the Irish diaspora in various prison museums scattered around the globe. So I invite you to backtrack to some of those videos. We have a little bit more time. Let me just share an anecdote with you. Where I live in my neighborhood, there's a friend of mine who is Irish born, from Dublin, emigrated to the US. And years ago when I told him I was going to Australia, he says, "Hey, you want to hear a funny story?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?" And he said that when he was a teenager, his friend went on holiday from Dublin, Ireland to Sydney, Australia. And he made the journey, flew over to Sydney, arrived, went through passport control, with an Irish passport. And the passport officer said, kind of in a matter-of-fact way, said, do you have a criminal record?" And he paused for a moment, kind of smiled, and said, "Well, I didn't think you needed one anymore." The officer was not amused. He said, "Okay, Patty, you're in detention for another 5 hours." There you go. It's a great story. This is a storytelling institution. And I'm foreshadowing a little bit in this series of lectures on prison tourism, because we're going to go to Melbourne, Australia, and then we're also going to go to Australia, where I was a visiting professor in the Faculty of Law, the University of Buenos Aires. So I have intimate knowledge from the standpoint as an outsider, mind you, of these dynamics, these parallels between Australia and Argentina with respect to prison museums. And the dream of order figures prominently in my analysis. And that is how both Argentina and Australia use the prison as a paradigm, as a model for ordering society. I'm foreshadowing, meaning I'm not going to give you any more information, but I'm going to leave you with this. A few years ago, I was invited to give a lecture at the State University of New York on my work on penal tourism, and this was the poster that they designed for the event. I thought it was really fantastic. This is a photograph of mine from the Melbourne jail, and that's the next prison museum we're going to explore. So thanks for listening to all these episodes and putting up with all of my storytelling. I think at this point we're just going to conclude, and I'm pleased to announce that the bar is open. Cheers.